For those of you who don't remember a world before MTV, the idea of home preserving may seem as alien a concept as churning butter, making your own clothes, or making do with a 1400 baud modem. If, on the other hand, you grew up during World War II, you may well remember putting up your gardens in community canning centers just like this one. Now, your memories of shucking corn and shelling peas and peeling potatoes may not exactly be romantic, but hey, you had food on the table during some pretty tough times. For the rest of us, canning is really a quaint curiosity. American? Absolutely. Wholesome? Sure. But is it necessary? I mean, come on, our local Mega Mart's got everything we need, right? Well, I may not be as hardcore as some canners, but I do have a serious lust for good fruit preserves. And I'm not talking about that goopy, super sweet, grotesquely overpriced supermarket stuff. I'm talking homemade. I'm talking about jewel-like jams and jellies, marmalades and compotes that have this heady aroma and a flavor that's got the power to somehow capture entire summers of your youth. Can even elevate a simple piece of toast to a culinary canvas of Proustian proportion. Old-fashioned? Sure. Time-consuming? A little. Easy and cheap to do at home? Absolutely. Good eats? Nothing in the fruit spread repertoire can beat jam when it comes to flavor return on time and money invested. Besides toast, cake, yogurt, pancakes, it is equally at home in meat sauces and glazes. Stuff's culinary plastic. And once you've made and tasted your own, you won't believe you ever shelled out $3 a bottle for something that easy. Now, although most of us consider jam making to be two sides of the same culinary coin, they are in reality mutually exclusive operations. Now, to the uninitiated, jam making can seem a little old-fashioned, maybe a little bit threatening, but preserving, whew, to most folks, that's downright nature-cheating voodoo, or at the very least,
a potentially dangerous game which you could lose to a wide variety of nasty microbes. Luckily, there is a way of dealing with Mother Nature's microscopic minion. Don't believe me? Well, maybe you'll believe
Dr. John Brooks from the Center for Disease Control.
Seal it, sterilize it.
Isolate and annihilate. Doc, time to face the wheel.
Let's start with enzymes.
Enzymes.
Most enzymes are destroyed at 170 degrees Fahrenheit.
Gone at 170.
All right.
What's next?
Well, then between 170 and 212 degrees, you get things like yeasts.
Yeast, molds,
Bacteria, both their spores and toxins.
Spores and their toxins. All of this stuff, by the time we're boiling, gone.
That's right. And finally, things like staph.
Nasty.
Mm-hmm. Bacteria that also makes a toxin.
Gone at 212.
You bet.
That leaves one pie on the big wheel.
Botulism.
Bad bug.
Botulism is a very bad bug. Not only does it like the anaerobic environment of a can or a jar, but it can survive temperatures of 212 so that its spores can stay in the food and grow.
So basically, any low-acid food, like, say, meat, vegetables, anything that botulism would like, cannot be processed the way that we're processing today. Got to have a pressure canner.
Exactly. Anything with a pH under 4.6, pressure canning only.
Which is why we're sticking to fruits. Now, just out of curiosity, Dr. Brooks, what would our viewers win if they were to get botulism?
Well, you get 3 to 6 weeks of being fully conscious, but also fully paralyzed.
Wide awake, can't move a muscle. I don't think that's winning. Come on, Doc. Technically, the only equipment you need for jam making is a saucepan and a big spoon. But if you're going to preserve your jam, you're going to need some extra gear. And the local hardware store is the place to get it. W, aren't you a little out of your jurisdiction?
At least I know how to use most of this stuff.
No, true.
Besides, you called me.
I did. We're going to be canning, and I was hoping that you would help us gear up.
All right, but let's hurry. Keymaster over there is giving me the creeps. There are tools for every stage of the canning process, but only a few are essential. What are you putting up?
With you. Jam.
All right, you'll need jars.
Jars.
8-ounce mason jars with 2-piece lids.
Oh, come on, W. Those old things haven't changed design since John Mason first had them patented back in 1857. Couldn't I use some of those cool European...
The reason why it hasn't changed, Mr. Know-It-All, is because it works. The lid has a sealing compound on it, and the ring holds it in place until a vacuum can be formed, thus sealing the jar.
Right. Well, can I at least reuse the pieces?
The jar and the rings, yes. The lid, no. The sealing compound's a one-time thing.
All right. Well, what else do I have to have?
Jar lifter for handling hot, sterile jars.
Yeah.
And a wide mouth funnel. They're both must.
Got it. Hey, it's fun. Kind of like that.
Oh,
What?
no.
Oh, hey, your little buddies back. W? Now, the first step to jam making is to give everything a good wash. Jars, lids, tools, the works. Now, you could use your dishwasher for the job, but beware the dry cycle. It's too hot in there for the sealing compound on these lids. I think the old-fashioned way is just as easy. Now, cleanliness may be next to godliness, but only sterilization can prevent your jams from turning into chia pets. So, the whole menagerie, except for the lids, goes into a big pot for sterilization. Now, to prevent the jars from rattling around on the bottom of the pot, I like to use this old metal basket, but a cake rack on the bottom will work too. If you spring for a canning kettle, oh, those are sweet, 15 or 20 bucks. Actually comes with a jar rack, pretty nice. Now, I've got enough hot tap water in here to cover the jars, the rings, the funnel, and everything by about an inch. So, I'm gonna put this on high heat and bring it to a boil. I'm going to keep it there for a solid 10 minutes. Okay, time for the fruit. Oh, don't worry about that. The crew will watch it. Jams get their spreadability from a water-soluble carbohydrate called pectin, whose job is to basically hold plant cells together. Now, when a fruit is heated in jam making, the cell walls break down and pectins are released. Now, acid and sugar can tag team to put them back together again. And when they do, you've got a gel. Now, all fruits contain pectin. Apples, blackberries, cranberries, grapefruit contain high enough concentrations of both pectin and acid to create a gel with nothing but sugar added. Now, blueberries, cherries, sweet oranges have the pectin but need help on the acid. Apricots, pineapples have the acid but not the pectin. Mangoes, bananas, peaches, raspberry need help on both sides of the equation. Now, considering that rain and ripening and all of that can affect pectin content, who can say which fruit will get stiff and which won't? This is why I take out insurance. Jam purists, look away. Both liquid and powdered pectins are available at most markets, especially during late summer when people can the most. Use these, you will never suffer a jam or jelly failure. Now, although the difference between wet and dry are subtle, my general rule is to stick with powdered pectins for jam and liquids for jelly. Now, pectin-added jams require more sugar than those made au naturel, but they also don't take so long to cook, so they usually have a fresher fruit taste. Now, speaking of fruit, I am going with frozen blueberries. Frozen fruits are fine for jam, but since they're picked at the peak of ripeness, they usually contain a little less pectin. But do we care? Nah, we're protected. Minutes is up. So, gonna slap the lid on this and turn off the heat. Now, right now, this water is so hot that if we were to sterilize the jar lids, the sealing compound could melt and it would keep us from getting a good seal on the jar. So I'm gonna let this water cool down for 5 or 10 minutes and then toss these in and leave them with the rest of the gear until we're ready to jar things up. So, now we move to the jam making side of the line. And what we're gonna start with is a nice, big, non-reactive saucepan or pot. First thing that goes in, 2 bags of frozen blueberries. These are 12-ounce bags. Now, you notice this is a completely unmarked, unbranded, generic bag of pectin, but that's okay. You want to kind of just sprinkle it over like this. Just kind of shake it back and forth, almost like putting sugar on your morning cereal. Now, what else should go in here? Spices. I like to start with a little bit of cinnamon, and this is really high-quality cinnamon. I get it mail order, so I know it's fresh. I'm just going to go with a 1/4 teaspoon. We're going to go with a little bit of star anise. Now, if you haven't seen star anise, it's a pod seed pod like this that's ground up entirely. And you can just grind it up either in a mortar and pestle, or you can use your electric spice grinder like a coffee mill. But get it as fine as you can because it is a little fibrous. And you don't need much, 1/4 teaspoon. The stuff is very, very strong. It's kind of got a licorice flavor. We need some nutmeg. And I hate the nutmeg in grocery stores, the ground stuff. It loses its flavor so fast that if you don't use it in a month, it's gone. So I buy whole nuts. These things will keep their flavor for years, literally. Just a little grater, and give maybe 20 grinds. What else do we need? Well, pectin will not gel without acid. And if you remember, blueberries are on the low acid side of the fruit chain. So we're going to add both lemon juice and some cider vinegar. We've got 2 tablespoons of the lemon juice, that's 1 fluid ounce, and 4 tablespoons of the vinegar, that's 2 fluid ounces, right on top. Now, we're going to bring this to a boil, but we're going to do it very, very slowly because what we don't want to have happen is for all that frozen fruit to get burned on the bottom before it's had time to seep out. So low heat at first, and as you start to look at the bottom, once you see some juice start to kind of accumulate on the bottom, take your masher to it. 5 minutes has gone by and we have boilage. The fruit is completely mashed and the pectin is charged up and ready for action. Now take a look. You don't have to get this completely smashed fine. So it's time for the third component, sugar. 3 cups of sugar. And it's here for 3 very distinct reasons.
First, without sugar, jam wouldn't be spreadable. 2, without sugar, pectin won't set. And 3, since it's hygroscopic, sugar takes up water, making it unavailable for potential bacterial invaders.
Now, as soon as the sugar is back in, bring up the heat just to about medium-high and stir constantly until this hits a rolling boil. Now, since we're going to lose some water through evaporation, I want to also add ½ a cup of water.
Then go ahead and bring this to a boil over medium-high heat.
After stirring your way through 1 minute of hard boiling, you're done. This is jam. That's it. You're finished. You can pour this into jars, let it cool, refrigerate it for up to 2, maybe 3 weeks. But if you want to have that wonderful feeling of marching down to the cellar and returning with that beautiful old bottle of 99, you're going to have to cross over to the preserving side of the line. Here's how it goes. We're going to extract our tools first. I've got paper towels laid out on a cutting board here. The reason I want a cutting board is, well, putting hot jars on top of any counter, especially if it's made out of metal or rock like granite or marble, can cause thermal shock and crack the jars, which would not be a good thing. Try to drain out as much water as you can out of each one. Okay, now grab your funnel with your finger in the ring. Don't reach on the inside or you'll ruin that sterile environment. And just set it right inside the jar. It's a perfect fit. Now we're basically going to spoon in just enough jam to come to the bottom lip of the funnel. That's going to guarantee about 1/3 of an inch from the top of the jam to the top of the jar, and that's called headroom. And it's a very important space because that air is going to get pushed out during the processing, and then when the jar cools, that's going to create a vacuum. If there's fruit all the way up to the top, there won't be any air, no vacuum, no seal, jam goes bad. It's not pretty. Now, whatever I've got left over, I don't have quite enough for another jar, so I'm probably going to let this cool down. And I'll put it in a jar, but I'm just going to park it in the refrigerator and use it first. And we need to wipe down the rims of the jars, so just use a damp paper towel, clean paper towel, and just go right around the outside. And really take a little time just to make sure there aren't any chips and there's not any jam stuck on the edges. There. So the next step is to retrieve the lids, and for that I use this nice little hardware store magnet and place them right down on top of the lid. Don't push, just set for now. This helps to keep this whole situation incredibly sterile. The trick about these bands is that you don't want to screw them down hard. They're not there to squeeze that lid onto the glass. They're there to just hold it in place until the vacuum can be formed. And then just twist them just barely tight, just kind of finger tight. You're not going to be able to hold on to the jars very long anyway, believe me, because they're so hot. But that's actually a good thing. Now, each jar goes into the processor. Of course, I'm not actually using a kettle. They make kettles exactly for this purpose, and if you do a lot of canning, you can get one. I just line them up in there. It's important that they've got enough room so the water can circulate all around them. So I just get them in there and then I rearrange them once I've got them in place. The heat's on high. We're going to process these for 5 minutes, okay? But that's 5 minutes starting from the time that they boil. So we're going to wait on this. And don't be fooled if you start to see bubbles come out from around the jars. That's not boiling. What that is the air inside the jar starting to push out. So don't be fooled. Ask most cooks and they'll tell you that the boiling point is all about heat, that it's one of the true benchmarks that you can count on in the kitchen. And if you talk to a physicist, you get this.
Well, heat's a factor, but only as it relates to pressure. See, as we heat a liquid, we excite its molecules, and they try to escape as a vapor, but they're prevented by and large by the force of the air column pushing down on it until we heat it up enough that the pressure of the vapor exceeds the atmospheric pressure, and that's when we have a boiling liquid. So up here, we'll have this water boiling at a slightly lower temperature than down there. Wow, we're high up. Because up here, there's less sky pushing down on it.
Less sky.
Right.
So is this something you can predict, or is this like rolling chicken bones?
No, it's not like rolling chicken bones. This is science.
Science.
We can count on a 1 degree Fahrenheit decrease in boiling point for every 500 feet we go up.
Okay, so that means that in Denver, water boils at about 204?
Right.
Cool.
And on Mount Everest, it's 156 degrees Fahrenheit.
156. Wow, must be tough to get a hard-boiled egg on Everest.
Yeah, but at that temperature, you can reach right in and grab it.
Reach right in and grab them. Oh, like Daryl Hannah did in Blade Runner.
She was a replicant. It didn't count.
You got beat up a lot in school, didn't you? So, where you are really does decide how long you process. Within 1,000 feet of sea level, 5 minutes is fine. Between 1 and 3,000 feet, add 5 minutes. Between 3 and 6, add another 5. From 6 to 8,000 feet, you get another 5 minutes. And the occasional nosebleed. So, those of you in Denver, you're looking at a 15-minute process, while here at sea level, our 5 is up. Now, carefully remove the jars, either to a cutting board or a towel spread on the counter. Again, metal or tile surfaces could cause thermal shock. And believe me when I say, there is no mess like broken glass and blueberry napalm. Now, as soon as the jars start to cool, you're going to hear popping sounds. And unless you live in a really rough neighborhood, it's not gunfire. What it is that the little bit of air that remains in the headroom is contracting as it cools, and that pulls the lid down, creating a vacuum. That seals the jar hermetically. Now, I usually leave these to cool for at least 8 hours before checking the seal, labeling, and storing. Now, to check the seals, you want to push down on all the lids. If they don't pop up and down, you're good to go. If you encounter a no sealer, it'll go up and down and pop like one of those little clicky toys you had as a kid. If that happens, just park it in the refrigerator and eat it within the next couple of weeks. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not preserved. Resealing is not an option. Now, unless you plan on moving them around a lot or giving the jars as gifts, it's best to store them with the rings off. They're prone to rusting, and they can actually mask a jar gone bad. Follow me. Most experts don't recommend keeping home preserves more than a year, but I admit I occasionally go beyond that limit, but only with high-acid foods like my jams, fruit preserves, and jellies. The last of the 98 mint. Magnificent spring that year. Notice the label information, recipe name, where it came from, date it was canned. Now, I've never actually witnessed a jar go bad, but as all sci-fi fans know, suspended animation can go awry. So, check out a jar before opening. If yeast or certain bacteria have weaseled their way in, they'll give off gas, which, if you've left the ring off, will pop the lid. If that happens, discard. Survey the surface for fuzzy mold. Have you seen any? Discard. If the food has mysteriously heaved up, filling the headroom, discard. Now, open and smell. Smell funny or off? Discard. Are there suddenly bubbles everywhere? Discard. Doesn't look quite right? Discard. We hope we've piqued your interest in And appetite 4, a little homemade jam session. Just remember, as in good jazz, improvisation must be avoided until one has the chops for the job. Stick with reliable recipes, don't double them up, and never substitute ingredients, ever. To find out more, check out the National Food Safety Database at www.foodsafety.org. It's loaded with reliable recipes and information on canning and preserving. And hey, it's from the government, so it's got to be good, right? And remember, when the Queen told Alice, the rule is jam tomorrow and jam yesterday, but never jam today, she didn't know what good eats she was missing. See you next time.